Thanks for getting the meeting going, Janaea. Does that mean that the recording's going to be on your cloud or whatever?
Yes, and I
Probably.
can share it with you.
Great, thanks. I just want to make sure it gets posted to our
Of course.
website. So, yeah, for those that can't make it since we ended up doing it on this Frosty Friday. Welcome, everyone. We'll get going in a few. Right now, we're still admitting people, so I just want to make sure that most of us are there trying to join at noon are in before we get going.
And I can keep letting folks in too once you start, Maureen, so you don't have to do it.
Okay, great. I appreciate that.
Of course.
Yeah. I just don't want to be starting and having to repeat a lot, so get going in a couple. Something I want to try next time. I went to one of Meredith's meetings, and while she's letting people in, she plays Solidarity is Forever, and I think that's awesome.
That is awesome.
Mhm. And also 9 to 5, if it's going to be a few. And can you really go wrong with Dolly Parton?
I'm going to have that stuck in my head. Thanks a lot.
Welcome, everyone. We'll get going in a minute or two. We're still letting people in, and I don't want to start if we can help it. And Michael, if you could watch chat while we're talking, and if I'm not talking, I'll watch it, but that would be helpful too. Yeah. So, just so everybody knows, I think we're gonna get going now as we're still letting people in. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna debrief what happened with the fourth quarter meet and confer in November, at the end of November with management. Then I thought I would briefly just talk about the fact that paid leave is coming and open that up to questions too. But then I expect to use like pretty much the second half of this meeting as a Q&A for things that are going on around Deed with the meet and confer, but also, like, you can ask those paid leave questions too. And I would say, I'll repeat this later, that I highly recommend that folks go to those. I see that HR just put out two potential sessions that you can go and have office hours and ask paid leave questions. I highly recommend you go to those if you can. But if not, I know I plan to go, and so do some other folks, so that we can, answer how Deed is planning to do that. Because with Minnesota paid leave, MMB has guidance, but it's letting the administration of that program be pretty much up to the agencies on the agency side. I mean, that can be a little confusing because we do have a whole division with Indeed that also administers paid leave on the actual program side of that. So I'm specifically talking about how does the agency plan to administer it. So I would suggest going to those meetings. So anyway, let's get going and we'll talk about what we talked about at Meet and Confer. One of the first things we talked about was RTO and ergonomic concerns raised by us around shared working spaces. So, they've had some training in December, is what they've answered, virtually in person to do assessments for employees. And so they're training other staff basically. They have about 15 to 20 people currently trained to do ergonomic assessments. And the end goal is to have a trained staff at each physical office location. And Brenda Tuma is leading a lot of that effort. And she's reviewing virtual assessments and ergonomic, assessments around monitors. So if you're interested in doing that training, you should get in touch with HR and Brenda to see if you want to be somebody that's an ergonomic, assessment person. So with the shared workspaces, what we were concerned about was if like a really tall person and a really short person, for instance, share a workspace, what's that going to look like for them, making their desk more ergonomic. And we ask that they really look into making things as customizable as possible, making sure that monitors can be moved up and down, making sure that, desks when they're in shared spaces can be moved up and down, that sort of thing to make it more approachable. But also to, if you're having issues with that, to make sure that you're reaching out to maybe get more ergonomic equipment. I know it's been difficult as people have moved back into some office spaces to have equipment that, meets your needs when you have things set up exactly how you want them at home. So we just wanted to let you know that we have been working with management, having those conversations, and they are working to get people trained to make sure that people have the ergonomic needs in their workspaces when they do have to be in the office. Um, so we talked about some building issues at Great Northern Bank, pest and mice removal. But they're doing routine uh, addressing of that. So we asked about how often that is, and they just said that it was happening on a regular basis. Um, and then, we talked about how people were bothered by an email that came out that said that employees should have to, take the cleaning supplies and go clean up rodent droppings. And they clarified that that was meant to say that if you wanted to try to help, you could do the things mentioned in that email, and that particularly if you didn't want to wait for somebody else to get there. Um, so if you are being told that nobody will clean that up, and that you have to clean it up yourself, still, please reach out because we will follow back up with HR on that. Because nobody should have to clean up rodent droppings because they did not make that mess. All right. And so we asked about accessibility improvements to Great Northern and where we're at with them. And so you know, they did get all gender restroom signs updated. There's still some Braille signage needed to be updated. And, they're still working on that. We did express our concerns and really our frustration at this point that we've been back in the building for 3 years. We've been talking about Braille signage for 3 years. We have state services for the blind within our agency, and one of the things they do is Braille signage. And yet we're still waiting on Braille signage for places where our own people who might be visually impaired might have trouble navigating the building without it. Um, been assured that it is in the works, and we'll keep pushing on that. Uh, and as we've also talked about how the building itself isn't always that accessible with tight spaces, and we've been told that our Office of Diversity, Equity, Equal Opportunity is working on that. Heather Stein, the director, is looking at going above and beyond in some areas because, frankly, the minimum for accessibility is quite minimal. And making spaces more navigable, making sure that there's buttons and things on doors where there might not be some because maybe there isn't a requirement because of the weight of the door and things like that. So, I believe that we as a group are going to reach out to that office, particularly to talk about some of the concerns we have around accessibility and disability accommodation. Um, so, achievement awards. We had some more talk about what the criteria is, you know, and one of the things that we talked about was the subjective nature of the awards and how some divisions it's a big part of like their culture, others it's not. We asked about whether or not that's limited by funds, and we were told that that was not a concern, that, there weren't any divisions that weren't giving them out because they didn't have the funding available for achievement awards. And so, it might mean, working with those divisions more to make that more a part of the culture. I think one of the ways that we do that is nominate each other and don't wait for supervisors to do that. And then if those nominations aren't getting through, we come back and ask why not. Especially if we look over the criteria that are posted on the den and make sure that, we're saying how this person's, achievement award is because they're going above and beyond in some way, shape, or form, and that we want to see them recognized for that. So hopefully, as they start to transition, and there was a time there where they had been halted, and as we're seeing them come back again, just make sure that you're nominating folks as you see the need to do so. I think it's great to recognize our peers. And we talked some about the performance review changes that we have going on. We talked about particularly the return of graciousness and how we're seeing already, even though we haven't had a chance to talk to as many of you as we'd like to, a disparate impact for graciousness. Basically, everybody that we've seen moved down on that. Um, yeah, I'm sorry, I left my video off today. I should say that because I've had some lag when I've had it on, when I've been on Zoom, the last couple meetings I've been on today. So sorry about that. I usually am on camera. Um, but we've seen some disparate impact with performance reviews. And Michael, if you want to jump in, I know you've talked to some people about this too, but generally they've been women and particularly in some cases women of color, which we had predicted, which is what made it problematic the last time it was on the performance review. So we're continuing to have discussions about that, and we're hoping by the time we do our next round of performance reviews, that we talk more about that because it is something that's really difficult to objectively measure. Especially when you look at like the actual definition of graciousness in the dictionary. And one of the things talk about gentility and of good breeding. And, it's just not the best way to be measuring somebody's performance. And so we fought against it successfully in the past. We'll continue to fight against the use of it. And if you are ever marked down on it, you should fight that and get one of us to sit with you. You have a right to steward at a performance review appeal. And frankly, nobody should be being told that they're not gracious enough. So, um, that being said, we also have a fight going on right now with the peer reviews that, I think they're called partner insights now, is what they're calling them. They were peer insights before. But what that boils down to is it should be optional. And we were told that it's optional for us to choose somebody, but that somebody's supervisor could still choose that. And as a result, we do have a class action grievance in about that because nobody should be should choose should frankly opt out and then find out that somebody is going to be reviewing them that they didn't have any say about. Uh, and it should not be forced. Reviews are supposed to be coming from somebody outside of our bargaining unit. It's one thing if you want to have that to help inform your performance review. It's another thing entirely if you're being forced to have that. So just wanted to let you know that we actually, that is grievable language, and so we are grieving that. Um, We asked just a quick thing about the budget, if there'd been any changes to it or upcoming layoffs because of it since we last spoke. Um, and we were told that, it depends on what happens with the next continuing resolution. Right now, nothing has changed, but if something is dropped or changed about the next continuing resolution, we may or may not have funding for things that we have had, past January. So, um, basically nothing's changing right now, but the continuing resolution could change that. And I guess that's the best answer we'll have, but we will stay on top of that. We did hear that our Proud program is losing some funding, and that's out of Career Force, and that could impact some members. So we will be talking to management about that after the new year to see what that expected impact would be, and if there's any plan for what the staff that are in that program right now. So management came to us and wanted to talk about the safety committee and getting designated members on that. So maybe come to us if that is something that you're interested in being. And if and also if your location does not have a currently running safety committee, maybe let us know that too, so we can help facilitate getting a safety committee going at your location. But there's a statewide one that meets. It hadn't been meeting regularly, but it is now. And we should be having some representation on that regularly. And those notes and everything do get posted to the den, and that will help us with some of the safety and building issues that we've been having. So, as we know, we've been having elevator issues at Great Northern. And that's something that we're going to have to stay on top of. But it's exacerbated by the fact that some of them get turned off, and the whole Fourth Street side doesn't have them running after 5:30 p.m. And we've asked to see if that could be changed, and we'll be following up on that. We've had one of our members of our team got stuck for over an hour after hours because there's only one elevator running, and it got stuck. Somebody else had to like walk all the way down and hope that the door was unlocked when they got to the bottom. That's unacceptable, and we'll keep pushing on that because our members should be safe while they're in the building. We had some talk about forms and if and making sure that you complete them if there's an incident. So if you aren't sure how to complete, like if something happens and you observe it or are part of it, and you really should report that so that DEET is aware of it so they can't pretend they don't know about it happening when we talk to them about that. But also so that they can be taking measures to address the things that are happening in your building, whichever building you might be in. Um, fill that out if you're not sure. There are some forms on the den, but it can be kind of confusing which one to complete. Reach out, and I'm gonna send out like a notice, just kind of recapping all of this, and I'll provide some links to the forms and things that should be used. But just know that the more tracking we can do of incidents, and the more that we can do to, let them know what kinds of things are happening, the more we can hold them accountable for doing something to address those concerns. Um, and, because we've had loitering, we've had altercations. The career force in Minneapolis North and South, I've been told, need to have, more safety training. Mankato had a window that was completely out and allowed access through. Um, and that, was particularly concerning for the folks in that area. So, I mean, we are tracking those issues. If you know of ones that we don't know about, maybe just send something to one of the members of the DD Confer. I'm happy to take that. You could send it to Michael, any one of us, if you know us, just make sure you do that. We talked about with return to office. Having designated bad weather days, or like yesterday where they shut the heat off in Great Northern, being able to be out, but also being able to work from home when it's terrible weather. Some divisions already do this, and we're asking to like make that more of a regular thing, so that if your job can be done from home, that you can do it there. on a bad weather day. And we might not have any control around which locations close, but nobody should have to, get in an accident in a snowstorm trying to get to work. So we said that we were told that they'd look at that more. We will be following up, uh, but just know, don't be afraid to ask your supervisor about that. And if you get pushback, let us know so that we can then look into that further for you and, have some examples of where it's not happening. Um, so we got some departmental updates. Basically, we've committed to doing some division-specific meet and confers around division-specific issues. If you're in UI, career force or paid leave, we'll probably be reaching out to you directly to talk more about that. To UI, I know we have vacation issues. Paid leave, it's really just about the fact that they're a new division and making sure that they're treating their folks like they're an actually unionized workplace. And career force, I know that there's been staffing issues, particularly, and a lot of issues around like calls and prioritization of work, and also staffing those locations in the winter. So, you know, um, watch for meetings so that we can talk about this more. And then we did talk about concerns about ICE harassing state employees and what to do if that happens. You know, we do have people in our agencies that look like the people that are getting harassed by ICE, and we don't want our employees to be harassed by ICE. We asked about a policy. Um, we shared the policy that pollution control has, and we were told that there had been some training about, staffing at doors and stuff, letting folks in. But really, I think this needs to be an ongoing conversation that, the intent is not to let them in if they don't have the warrant to come in, but also the intent is to, on our side at least, is to make sure that if somebody were to say get scooped up, that their job is, you know, aware and, held for them while they have to deal with the things they do. If it happens at work, that their, next of kin or whoever their emergency contact is notified and those sorts of things. So just letting you know that that's on the radar. We don't want our staff that we work with to be scared, and we also, don't want them to get themselves into issues when they're serving the public that, would put them in harm's way and would put, frankly, the people that they serve in harm's way. So, if you have more concerns about that, please reach out. If you think there's ways that we could talk to management about this, please reach out. But, it's really an ongoing discussion of, okay, you were at say, one of the career force locations and got scooped up out in the parking lot. What then can, we do for you at that point? In keeping your job and in making sure that somebody knows what happened to you and all those kinds of things. Because I know it's frightening for some of us. And I'm saying this in a very non-political way. I am not saying that we're trying to change the agency's position. We're just trying to make sure that our members are protected. So please understand, I do have my own politics about this that I'm going to keep out of this conversation. But, we do have a responsibility as state employees to look out for each other and as a union to have solidarity with one another. And that includes when something like that happens to each other. So, yeah, sorry, it's something that I feel pretty strongly about. We asked for additional respectful workplace training for managers, particularly in divisions where we have a lot of new managers like paid leave, making sure that people are being respected and that they understand what that looks like. And you know, um, I just want to encourage you if you're in that position where you might not be respected by your manager, talk to us. I know it can be really scary to file that complaint, but if it's rampant in a division, get together, file the complaint, have that strength in numbers. But as we are in the offices more, we're seeing more respectful issues. And we have the policy for a reason. I if your manager is not respecting you, or if a fellow coworker, let's work on trying to work some of that out. And and make sure that we're all treating each other with the respect and dignity that we deserve. And if you're not seeing that, let's try and get some help so that that person can get training or whatever, so that they are respectful in the workplace, especially with new managers. It can be an issue. Um, we talked about background checks that we're changing at MPCA, and asked if that was going to do anything to the background checks at our agency, because those can happen for us at any time. And we were told that Deed already meets that standard, and that there wouldn't be any changes for our background checks here at Deed. And then basically from there, we talked about the meetings in the future, and following up. So that's what we had at our last meet and confer. And we'll probably take new meetings and new things to the next meet and confer. So if there are things that you want us to be talking about, please reach out. We don't want to we want to make sure that we're addressing anything that, is impacting you in the workplace that wouldn't be handled by like a steward, or and even sometimes things that are, if we're seeing like issues crop up, where like stewards are seeing the same things over and over and again in divisions, we should know about that too, so that we can be taking that to have a further conversation about that. So before we move on to Q&A, I just briefly wanted to talk about Minnesota paid leave. That's coming. We've talked about that in quite a few spaces, but I don't think we've had anything deed-wide about that. So, premiums will start coming out of our checks in January. It's a program, we have paid leave folks on this call that could probably tell us even more about that, but it provides, up to 12 weeks for your own medical condition, including like recovery from pregnancy. But it also provides family leave. So, for instance, an additional um, up to 8 weeks, or up to 20 total if you have two events, like a family leave and a medical leave. But then, the family ones are bonding for a child, taking care of a family member, taking care of yourself in institutes in or a family member, like in instances of like domestic abuse or stalking. And then also there's some provision for when a member of the military in your family is being deployed, and having time off to deal with what goes along with all of that. So we've known that that was coming for a long time, but we've only recently gotten answers from MMB on how that's going to interact, like with leaves we already have in our contract. We've been told that yes, you can top off with your sick leave, your PPL, and your vacation, and in that order. So with the caveat that if it has to fit the condition. So if it's something that you could take sick leave for, you can top off your Minnesota paid leave with that. If it's not, you would have to use PPL in some instances, or vacation. So what that would mean for somebody who is, like, say, the birthing parent, they could top off their part for recovery from a birth with sick leave, not to exceed your weekly wage, and you need to be super careful about that. So if you are looking to do this, especially soon, make sure you're working with HR to work that out so that you don't cause an overpayment for yourself. But let's say you were planning on, like, say, 8 weeks for recovery, and then you wanted your 6 weeks of paid parental leave, and then you wanted to take some bonding leave on top of that. Um, you could manage to make that be up to 26 weeks. And you would have to supplement, though, the bonding piece of it with either paid leave, which would shorten it, paid parental leave, or you could take it with vacation after you've exhausted your paid parental leave. So it's important the order that you stack things in. Again, that's why you need to work with HR, and I strongly suggest going to their meetings. But also, it's important to know that they run concurrent, so that you're careful about how you time that. Um, meaning, the order that you take it in. So just make sure that you're talking about that with HR when you're planning to do that, because that is a planned leave. Non-birthing parents could still manage up to 18 weeks between paid parental leave and bonding leave, and could do the bonding leave with vacation to get up to their wage. Now, we did find out that short-term disability can stack with it, and you can go, that's the only situation where you could go over. So, like, let's say you're taking your full Minnesota paid leave amount that week, and with that, your short-term disability would go over your weekly wage. That is a time it could, because short-term disability is not affected by Minnesota paid leave and vice versa. So that is one area where those two can work together. And it took us a long time to get that clarification. So just letting you know that agencies are allowed to allow intermittent use up to 480 hours. So we'll need to be talking to Deed about what that's going to look like for our members. Um, so, there are some things that are still unknown, because the situations haven't come up, and it's new for both our agencies and for us. But just understand that this is something that you're going to be paying for, because it is a new tax to everybody in Minnesota. So if you have an incident where you qualify for it, you might as well go ahead and use it since you're paying for it. Um, so yeah, I'm willing to take questions on that as much as I can and as much as we have time for. But this seems like a really good time to open up for questions on, what I just talked about. And I did kind of blast through that real fast. Any members of the Meet and Confer that are on that want to add anything, please do. And then we'll take some questions. Okay. See people putting stuff in chat, but are there any questions?
There was a question about who would be the HR contact for the
Mm,
for leave. I think it
I
might
would
end up
s-
being who. Oh, you go.
I would start with whoever you would contact about FMLA and go from there, because it's going to be concurrent with FMLA. So that's where I would start. That's where it's been at agencies. Deed hasn't like come straight out and said contact this person, but that's where I would start until we're told otherwise. What were you going to say, Michael?
I was going to say the same thing.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I was
I
going to
didn't
say,
want to
or
cut you
maybe
off.
it's your. Yeah, I was going to say, or maybe your HR business partner, but most likely they'll just tell you to go to paid or to your to the paid leave people.
Mhm. Yeah, there's an, I can see people linking parts from the toolkit. There's a fantastic toolkit. I want to give mad props to whoever put the website together for paid leave. There's so much out there information-wise on what's available under Minnesota paid leave. Um, Kudos if that's you on the call, take a bow. Because it's amazing information, and I've used it in my talk, and I've used it when I've had the chance to talk to folks at MMB about this. This is what we have. How are you gonna make sure that people can still get that? So thank you, because it helped me expand my knowledge of paid leave as we went into negotiations, and as more stuff was posted, as we get questions from our members. Those of you who are having children soon, be talking to HR now about it. Those of you that have other things coming up where you might think you might need to use it, reach out. Um, Minnesota Paid Leave has some great forms, for filing that MMB said can be used to as part of the notification to the agency. So, doubling up, agency will also, of course, take its own FMLA forms as notification, but just, so that um, they've got everything out there for you to help make that process easier. There's a lot of you on this call. Are there really no questions about anything I talked about? Gloria, thank you for all that you're posting. It's going to be helpful for things. Oh, hey, Cass. Basically, we just talked about the conversations that we've been having with management about, accessibility, building concerns, safety across the state, pest problems, elevator issues, uh, the fact that we still don't have Braille at Great Northern and every place it should be, but issues with performance reviews, particularly the peer insights and graciousness. Just to kind of recap, and this is being recorded, so if you missed any part of it, it'll be posted online.
Hey, Maureen, I have a question. Do you know if the
Yeah.
EAP has any resources that would be beneficial to someone concerned about anything related to like immigration and ICE and all of the crazy stuff that's happening right now, whether it be the employee or a family member?
I don't know if they have, but I'd be willing to look into that. That I think would be helpful. Michael, go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah, we can definitely do that. The only thing I can think of at the moment, which is it's important, but it's maybe not what is the level of service that's needed, is like counseling or therapy if you're a victim of one of those incidents or you are a family member of yours is. But yeah, we can definitely look into other things as well. We might also want to follow up with like the legal plan stuff that was just rolled out.
sure. Yeah,
And so
I
we'll look into that as well.
okay, that's really helpful. And yeah, just like not oh man, it's I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole with that, but just like knowing the resources on the front end can be helpful if there was a situation that needed to be mitigated. Um or dealt with just kind of knowing because like we always hear like oh check the EAP or the legal aid stuff but it kind of feels like a mammoth to start with so if someone were in a predicament um just kind of
Mhm.
ironing some of those things out on the front end so I appreciate that, thank you.
Mhm. I do highly recommend that you have your emergency contact up to date in case anything does happen to anyone that, like outside the workplace or at the workplace, that we have a way to reach out and let somebody know. But yes, I think it would be helpful to have some resources there at EAP for folks to talk about.
There's a question about just kind of elaborating on the review process at the state, the peer review process, and maybe kind of
Mhm.
talking a little bit more about the graciousness issue.
Sure. When we, Back in 2021, we got graciousness removed from the performance reviews because it was impacting women and women of color disproportionately to anybody else. Not once has somebody brought to me that they were marked down on graciousness that was male, to, to be blunt about it. Um, and we talked about, how it's defined in the dictionary and how even though it's defined as a measure, that there might be another word to use better. So, we fought and said, and it came back to, well, maybe that shouldn't be the deed value then, because, they were just trying to measure all the deed values, right? And so that's the conversation we're having with HR now. Our HR is pretty much turned over completely since 2021, except for like one or two people. in, any sort of leadership position there. So I'm sure that was a factor in just putting it back on. But also, it's one of those things where if you engage with your union partners ahead of time before you do something, you can avoid some of these things. Um, so yeah, the fight is back on to remove it before the next round of performance reviews so that people are not getting marked down on it unnecessarily because people have in their heads what graciousness is. And really, sometimes it's being used to tell outspoken women that they should shut up, you know? And I don't want that to be the case. You should have a voice in your workplace. And, it's one of those things where, unfortunately with gender, sometimes what's considered assertive in one group of people is considered aggressive in another group of people. We don't want that. And so better to have the performance review not measure something that's that subjective. So that's the conversations we're having about graciousness. With peer reviews and partner insights, they were always optional in the past. The understanding, the way that they were presented to us was that they were optional. And then some of our members were finding out that they were not optional, that they were being forced to have partner insights after they'd opted out of choosing somebody. So the only people that were giving them partner insights were people that they had not chosen. And we said, well, there should be no part of this that is mandatory. And apparently, the guidelines that were posted for us and the guidelines that were posted for managers conflicted in that managers were told that they were encouraged to find people to give these insights. And so we have a class action grievance filed about this, and we're hoping to remove that from the performance review going forward. Because, yeah, sometimes you work very alone in what you do, and it would be hard for somebody to really give good insight into what you do as part of your team. But also, I mean, some teams are super collaborative and some aren't. But it also gives somebody who maybe is holding a little bit of a grudge against you the chance to say things about you that maybe aren't really fair. And if you don't have any chance to answer that, um, our contract says that our performance reviews are not to be done by members of our own bargaining unit. So that's why we have the grievance pending right now.
Yep. And then related to performance reviews, there was a question about what is a reasonable timeline to hear back after we meet with HR to formally have an appeal for their review.
Yeah. But I've said at least one appeal where that was one of the things the member was marked down on, and that's just not fair because your, supervisor thinks that you ask too many questions, and so you're not gracious. And that was a real thing. So you have 30 days from the time you're given a performance review to file an appeal.
But I think management doesn't have like as formal of a time frame to respond, or at least I didn't see it when I was looking in the contract.
No. So sometimes it can take a while, but your appeal and your comments then become part of your file along with the rest of your performance review. Were there any other questions about that?
Think the concern is that if you're forced to put people on your review and then information comes back that you know is erroneous, and then you go and you do an appeal, and within the time frame, I actually went and did an appeal. I had conversations with one person from HR, probably about
Hmm.
five lengthy conversations, and then the day we were supposed to meet with everyone to discuss, about 10 minutes before we were to have our discussion, they changed the person who was going to be running the appeal.
Oh, that's frustrating.
Well, that's not the word I wanted to choose, but it's one of them. Yeah, it
Well,
was.
I'm
Yeah.
staying with profanity on this call,
Oh no, no. Oh, I did speak profanity. Doesn't mean that I would go that route, but
No, I meant myself. Yeah.
yeah.
But
But now the challenge is, are they ever going to respond? Um,
I would
And
reach
then
out if they haven't. Yeah.
then there's the
How long has
fear
it
of
been?
reaching out, and then August.
Mm.
Then there's the fear of reaching out and have it be turned back around to me that, oh, look, we found these other things about you that are, so it's just this real delicate balance, of the retaliation and of the fear and different dynamics. It's like, hmm. So I'm kind of afraid to reach out and ask.
Okay.
So
Did you have a steward with you on that meeting?
I did. I
Okay,
did.
maybe they could do the reach out then and just follow up
Oh,
on it.
that's a good idea. Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm. Cindy, I was gonna type in chat, but I'm just gonna go ahead and answer verbally. I have a question. I was just received an invite to an HR meeting scheduled 12/29. It's copied to deed staff, DDL. Did any of the others get this invite? Do you have any idea what it might be about? If it's the meeting, I think it is. I think those are the new paid leave meetings, to do Q&As about paid leave. Um, and I think most of you should, if you can attend one of them. There were two, I believe. I suggest going. I mean, we are very lucky that we have paid leave in our agency, so we can ask those folks questions, if we need to. But this will be more like to ask how HR is planning to administer the guidelines that were sent by MMB to them just recently. That was only finalized like this month. So, which I'll just go back to saying frustrating, even though I have stronger words. Um, they've known this program was coming for a while. I wish they'd have finalized some of this a little sooner, but it's some of the things I was talking about earlier with, how it's going to stack with other leaves and things like that, that the agency has some latitude with, particularly about how much intermittent use they're going to let us have, and what that's going to look like. So, definitely worth going. Especially I'm thinking of somebody like recovering from a surgery that might want to come back to work part-time and use paid leave for the rest of the time, what that would look like. Same thing with somebody taking paid parental leave and wanting to come back, sort of on a phased way. So, useful to go and see what Deed's plans are. I'm planning to go just to see, like, I've seen how other agencies are doing it, and I want to see how our agency is planning to allow the use of the leave. I mean, some things they don't have a choice about. They're statutory, and our wonderful paid leave people, will be administering that piece of it. But, yeah, like how it stacks with other leaves and things like that. Um, we should, be talking to them about. And if you're planning to use it soon, definitely, get to talking to our HR staff that handle leave, which is, our FMLA people. And if you're having issues, let us know so that we can talk to HR about like the answers that they're giving if we think they're giving out bad info. Because this is new for everybody. And, it took a couple conversations with MMB to get on the same page. And I'm not sure we are 100% even now. I imagine there'll be some changes to guidance and things like that as we move, because this is new for everyone. HR's never done it before. It's new to the program that's going to be administering it, and it's new to all of us, and it's complex. Any other questions? And again, I'm sorry. I know I'm usually on camera for these, but that seemed to be messing with my sound at my last meeting that had, a group of people on it. So I'm blaming it on the weather. Thank you for so much of you for taking a Friday. I was worried about doing this on a Friday, but really I was having trouble finding any other time, and I didn't want to do this during the holidays when a lot of you are going to be out. So thanks for bearing with us doing this on a Friday at noon. So I guess I'll just repeat the request. If you have anything you want us to take to management, concerns you might have, the accessibility. is an ongoing conversation. Safety is an ongoing conversation. A lot of these things have been ongoing conversations. So if you have anything that you want to add to that or new topics, ICE was a new topic this time around. Um, you know, let us know. We want to make sure that we're watching out for everybody's best interests. And if you ever want to join us at a meeting because there's something you really feel passionate about talking to management about, reach out. That's a possibility too. We've done it before with other issues that were impacting our members directly. Sometimes it has more impact when they hear it from the person it happened to directly. Okay. I'll sit here quietly for a couple minutes in case anybody has anything additional, but then we're going to go ahead and end it if nobody has anything more they want to say. And yes, whatever holiday you celebrate, may it be awesome. Jack said, may your holidays filled with light, love, and connection, and that's what I want for all of you. Thank you all for coming. I think we can go ahead and end it. Doesn't look like there's any more questions.